players must also work together to tackle the shared threat of climate change. Continued global warming is likely to lead to more intense heat waves, droughts and severe storms in many regions. The social, environmental and economic costs of climate change could be huge. And climate change is not just a threat in itself. It acts as a multiplier on existing stresses over scarce natural resources. Global food prices are rising, and this could accelerate as climate change affects harvests around the world. Water scarcity will intensify with any rise in temperatures and changes in weather patterns resulting from climate change. The UN estimates almost half the world's population will be living in areas of high water stress by 2030. Rising oil and gas prices would be a huge constraint on stable growth. In Europe, we recognise the threat of climate change from an early stage and took bold action to start the transition towards a low-carbon economy. The EU has committed itself to reducing its greenhouse gas emissions by 20% by 2020 and by 80% by 2050. In the UK, we've made our low-carbon targets legally binding. London's become the financial centre for the emerging global carbon market. I know President Lee also recognises the scale and urgency of the problem, and I welcome the actions Korea is taking to accelerate the transition to an energy-efficient, low-carbon, high-growth global economy. The world needs clear leadership in climate change, an area where Korea could well play an important role. Korea has a real chance to become a global leader here. Countries do look to Korea as a model for economic growth. If Korea can show that it's possible to grow and be green at the same time, then there's a real possibility, a real opportunity to change the way that people think about economic growth. President Lee is clear that the drivers of future economic growth will be green, low-carbon technology, new and renewable energy, energy-efficient products. You're about to implement some of the hard policies to make the transition to this new green model of growth, notably through an emissions trading scheme. I'm pleased that the UK has been associated with many of the policy developments taking place, and I'm very proud of the strong partnership that my embassy has built with the Korean government on climate change. The Hankuk agreement showed that the international community is serious about tackling climate change, but we will achieve a legally binding global deal only when countries have confidence in the low-carbon economy. That makes Korea's role so important. Your green growth policies could be a model for the world. The world needs Korea to be active internationally, showing the leadership you did at the G20, explaining, exporting, and accelerating green growth. And from my time here in the 1970s, I remember the Semal movement. You took this model to other countries, telling the Semal movement story and encouraging leaders to develop their own programs. I believe Korea can use this sort of approach with low-carbon green growth. You can use the energetic diplomacy we saw at the G20 to tell the green growth story, persuading, building confidence, and encouraging leaders to develop their own green model of growth. Of course, the Semal movement developed over decades. It's still around. We don't have that time. Climate change will not wait. The world needs Korean leadership on green growth right now. The second responsibility of global players was to advance prosperity across national borders, rather than focusing on narrow national economic interests. The Great Depression of the 1930s and the more recent financial crisis showed us that economic stability in one country has knock-on effects globally. It is an open global economy that has driven economic growth and the rise in living standards around the world. A responsible global player is one that works with other countries to keep the forces of protectionism at bay and to dismantle barriers to trade. The UK continues to argue strongly for open trade and investment. And Korea shares that philosophy, that open markets are central to driving global economic growth and poverty reduction. We're both advocates of an early conclusion to the Doha Development Agenda in 2011. This would deliver a boost of £110 billion per year into the global economy, give the poorest people in the world a share of the benefits of globalization, and provide the global economy with a powerful engine for growth. It's important that Korea continues to be a voice in Asia advocating free trade. And I'm delighted to be speaking to you at a time when the EU and Korea have much to celebrate in terms of our commitment to liberalising trade. Britain strongly supports the swift application of the EU-Korea Free Trade Agreement, which will give a major boost to our bilateral trading relationship. It's important for both sides that the FTA is ratified and ready to come into force on 1 July this year. This is the most ambitious trade agreement ever negotiated by the EU and the second largest ever negotiated in the world, removing virtually all tariff and non-tariff barriers. We expect it to be worth up to 19 billion euros to European business and 13 billion euros to Korean business. It sends a powerful message to the rest of the international community that the EU and Korea are defenders of free trade and open markets. Now, as well as supporting international trade and open markets, Korea can also play a role to advance global prosperity through its overseas investments and its overseas development assistance. Korean investment in developing countries can propel those countries to the next stage of development and growth. To make this sustainable, the investment needs to promote better governance, less corruption, and improved accountability. Many developing countries have made their commitments to improve transparency and governance. Their larger trade and investment partners, including Korea, must use their engagement to support these goals. Korea can also play a powerful role as a provider of overseas development assistance. No one can fail to be impressed by Korea's rapid economic rise over the last 60 years, from a low economy country after the Korean War to the 15th largest economy in the world now. Since I arrived in Korea in 1978, I've seen with my own eyes the remarkable growth that has transformed this country, and your chairmanship of the G20 showcased this economic success story to the world. By sharing this experience and using your rising economic wealth to support comprehensive, tailored overseas development programs, Korea can contribute to lifting developing countries out of poverty. This in turn can contribute to a more peaceful and prosperous global society through the boosting of international trade and political stability. Britain welcomes Korea's admission to the OECD Development Assistance Committee, the forum where major donor countries discuss aid effectiveness. It's meaningful that Korea has now ascended to the status of a major donor of overseas development aid. Because of its experience, Korea will know how important it is for donors to focus on aid effectiveness. Effective aid is country-owned, results-focused, and not tied to commercial or political interests. The UK looks forward to taking this discussion forward in the high-level aid effectiveness forum in Busan later this year. The eradication of poverty is a vital international objective for the British government. By 2013, the equivalent of 0.7% of the UK's gross national income will be dedicated to development assistance, increasing from 0.36 in 2007 to 08. Our development programs are resolutely focused on the reduction of poverty in the poorest countries, and we stick firmly to the principle that aid must not be tied. Now, as a country that has transformed from authoritarianism to a stable democracy, and from developing to a developed nation in just a few decades, Korea will recognise more than most the vital place of human rights and democracy in foreign policy. Because of this history, Britain believes that Korea can play a unique role in supporting human rights in its foreign policy. Human rights are now a basic value in our system of international law. It's also clear in our experience that individual rights are a vital component of a stable and sustainable political and economic system. Where human rights abuses are left unchecked, regional and global security often suffers. Britain believes in strengthening the international frameworks and institutions that support human rights, such as the International Criminal Court and tribunals such as that for the former Yugoslavia. Global players need to make the argument to others that their interests, as well as our own, depend on a rules-based international system. We recognise, of course, that countries develop at different paces. Democracy rests on foundations that have to be built over time. Strong institutions, responsible and accountable government, a free press, the rule of law, and equal rights for men and women. Elections alone do not create a free and democratic society. But this does not mean we should sit on our hands or simply resign ourselves to the idea that change in certain countries will not happen for decades. We must work with other countries to build international coalitions that speak out against human rights abuses, using our own conduct to set an example. The European Union raises concerns about human rights wherever and whenever these concerns arise, including with those countries with whom we are seeking closer ties. The EU's enlargement to the south and east in Europe has done much to strengthen democracy and the rule of law across Europe. The enlargement process continues to act as a powerful catalyst for progress in these areas. Using its economic weight and its rising global influence, Korea has the ability to apply pressure on regimes which commit serious human rights abuses in places such as Libya and Burma, as well as, of course, in the DPRK. I've argued today that if you have a big stake in the international system, you need to step up and protect that system. Economic growth in other countries matters to the rest of us more than ever before. Instability is contagious. Health and environmental problems do not respect national barriers, national borders. So a global Korea with a large economic stake in the international system has a responsibility to uphold global security, prosperity and values. President Lee has been clear about this responsibility in his own speeches and his vision for Korea's international relations. Britain warmly supports his vision. So a Korea that steps up to maintain global peace and security, advances prosperity across borders, and upholds the international values of human rights and the rule of law would be a truly global player. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for listening. I'll be very interested to hear your questions. Thank you very much.